Who doesn't love Chashu pork? Chashu pork has to hands down be one of the greatest toppings for ramen or just over rice. It is just so good. And it's a lot easier to make at home than you think. When I was going into this thing, I was like, oh shit, like I'm way in over my head. I have no idea what I'm doing. But come to find out, you got a Dutch oven or a pot that is oven safe, and this is actually a pretty easy endeavor. And we're going to jump right into this at home. So let's get into it. Chashu pork, let's do it. Let's start with the pork itself. Chashu pork is made out of pork belly. Pork belly, to me, in my opinion, has to be one of the best pieces of meat out there, just as far as extensive use, because of you can roast it, you can bake it, broil it, you could slow cook it like we're doing. It's got limitless possibilities, and of course, you can make bacon out of it. Who doesn't love bacon? Um, I'm using the blue handled knife, which you'll see regularly in the videos. It is a Victorinox 6-inch semi-stiff bony knife, which is the knife of choice that I use at work. I'm a butcher, so I'm able to get these pork bellies pretty steadily. And I'm going to cut this little odd guy here because you can see it's kind of folded in on itself on the fat side. But I just wanted to show you what pork belly looks like from the inside there. You can see it's got a nice mix of like meat and fat, which I really appreciate. It's just a lot of that fat really keeps the meat tender inside. So I'm just going to put this off to the side so I can make a pork belly roast out of that so you guys don't have to see all the cutting. The size of the pork belly roast that you want to use is completely up to you. That's between you and however many quarts your Dutch oven or your pot is. A lot of it that you'll see in this video is going to take some kind of touch and go kind of things. You can see one side of this pork belly is really fatty, and I don't want a too fatty pork belly because then it's kind of fat. It's kind of gross just eating like regular animal fat. I want there to be some meat in there. So I'm going to roll this up nice and snug, and I'm going to do some testing just to see how much fat I got to trim down. And also too, by trimming it down, it'll cook a little bit faster, and it'll make for a nice tighter snug once we get it all rolled up and tied up. So you'll see me doing a little bit of that trimming, and it's all you have to do at home. You can trim more, you can trim less. I'm going to cut that whole end off just because it's basically all fat, and I'll render that down at home and make some really good cooking fat out of it. Some of you might be wondering, how tight do I got to roll this thing? And honestly, my answer is yes. Roll this thing tighter than Snoop Dogg rolls his joints. Like, you want this thing to be nice and tight because you want all that meat to adhere together so it doesn't come apart. You can see cutting that fatty end off right there was a good choice. It made the roast nice and even, more uniform, and so it's not going to have any spaces and openings because when we're done broiling it and then we chop it up into slices and then fry it, it's not going to come apart. All right, trusting the pork roast is a lot easier than it looks. You can do what I'm doing here. I'm not using a butcher's knot or a fancy Boy Scout knot. I'm just tying the ends first so that way the ends don't spill out if I were to tie regularly. So I'm just kind of tying it in like the first loop on a shoelace. Do whatever knot you got to do to get this thing tied up. As long as it's tied nice and tight and doesn't go anywhere, then you're gonna be sitting good. Just go ahead and line up the rest of the butcher's twine that you need right along the pork roast. If you're wondering where to get butcher's twine, your grocery store will have one. If your grocery store has a meat department with guys on the back of a counter where you can pick and choose what meat you want, there's gonna be butcher's twine. So get the thing tied nice and tight, and you're gonna be ready to rumble for the next step. Just cut off the ends right there so they don't burn in the pot, and you're ready to go. All right, now that you got both of your pork roasts tied nice and tight, you want to make sure you get some hot oil in your pot or your Dutch oven. Go ahead and put both of the pork roasts in. As you can see, mine barely fit, and we're just doing this just to brown the outside a little bit, get a little bit of fond going at the bottom, so when we add the sauce, it's going to amplify the flavor. All right, we're going to start making the sauce. I got half a cup of hot water, and the reason I'm using hot water is because when I pour the sugar in it, which is going to be half a cup of sugar, it's not going to dissolve to the bottom. I want to make the sugar first, so I'm going to put the sugar in the water, stir it up. It's going to dissolve. That way I don't have to worry about any sugar floating down at the bottom when we have our sauce all made and potentially burning at the bottom of the pot and screwing up the chashu. This is a lot of work, and I want a really good product. In addition to the sugar water, we're going to add a cup of tamari or soy sauce, half a cup of mirrin, which is like a sweet Japanese cooking wine. It's very tasty. And we're also going to add half a cup of sake. I got the sake at my Safeway just right down the road. You can get it at a liquor store if they have it. You can also use sherry or rice vinegar to substitute if you don't have sake. Stir it up and we're ready to go. Time to check on the pork roast, and you can see we got a nice little bit of color going on the outside. That's all we're going for. I'm not trying to cook them all the way on the outside. I just want to get a little bit of brownage on the outside, build some fond at the bottom of the pot to help amplify the sauce. You might find, like I'm finding myself here in this part, is that the roast is sticking to the bottom of the pot a little bit. That's okay. That's bound to happen. If you have like a fish spatula or the flattest spatula that you own, you can get it in there, shimmy it around. It lifts right up, and look at that. Nice, beautiful fond. Time to put the sauce in. Go ahead and just put the whole sauce right into the pot. It's going to lift up all the fond at the bottom. And then you want to add just enough water to the sauce, just so that way all the liquid comes up to right around the halfway level of your pork roast. Because we're also going to add one whole knob of garlic that was chopped up, 3 green onions that were cut up. I'm running out of space in my pot here. And I'm adding 4 garlic cloves that were peeled and crushed. You don't got to chop up anything too fine to dice. All of this is just going to simmer in there. We're going to put it in the oven at 250 degrees, and we're going to let these roast roll for about 4 hours, checking in on them every half hour and rotating them. Time to do the first check. It's been about a half hour, so I'm going to take the lid off of the pot, and the smells that were coming through already, that were going throughout the house, was amazing. That mirrin was really peeking through, and I can turn it over, and you can see just that nice dark rich brown of the sauce. It looked amazing. It smelled great. I knew we're off to a really great start. Like I said, every half hour for the duration of the 4 hours, you want to take these out. Just rotate the pork like I did right there. Put the lid back on, and then just keep letting them roll. Finally, 4 hours has passed, and the pork chashu is done. You can see how pretty it looks, that nice caramel rich brown. Now you think you're done, but you're not. What we're going to do is we're going to take all of the pork and the liquid out once it's cooled down. We're going to put it in this little blue container next to it and let it rest overnight so it can chill out. It's the morning after, and you can see all the fat from the pork belly has risen to the top. This is why it's really important to let your pork belly chill out, because all that fat can rise to the top. You can skim it out of the sauce. It's not going to be in the sauce. You can just put it off to a bowl like I am right now. And also, too, when you let the chashu rest in the fridge overnight, it solidifies everything, because the chashu is pork belly. Pork belly is mostly fat. All that fat is going to stay in there, keep all the meat nice and tight, along with the strings that you've attached to it, all the butcher's twine. And it's going to make for the slicing to be even easier when you take out your knife before you cook it. We're not done yet. We still got to cut it up, and we still got to caramelize the outside just a little bit so we can get the final product. Take the chashu out of the sauce and go ahead and get a strainer and pour all that sauce right through a strainer. It collects all the solids like the garlic and the ginger. Hold on to that sauce, because you're going to want to throw it into your rice bowl before you put the chashu in there. Gives it a wonderful flavor. You could also make soft-boiled eggs for ramen with the sauce. Time to take the butcher's twine off of the chashu roast. I'm just taking them off very carefully. I'm not yanking them out of there too hard as to not to damage the chashu. And then we're going to start slicing into it. Please make sure that your knife is super sharp, because you want to have as little sawing motion as possible. As you can see, I'm just kind of cutting right through. You can see the pork belly is nice and intact. I was really proud. This is the stage where I was the most worried. I was really concerned that the chashu was going to fall apart. But go ahead and just start slicing it thinly or as thickly as you would like. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Get a pan ripping hot. I'm using a non-stick pan. Go ahead and pour some sauce in there. All that sauce is going to caramelize because it has a lot of sugars in it. And go ahead and put your pork belly right in there so it can start caramelizing on both sides. The reason you don't have to put any oil in the pan is because, number one, it's a non-stick, but also number two, it's pork belly. It has its own fat that's going to secrete once the heat touches it, and it's going to start caramelizing it on its own. So just go ahead and make sure that everybody gets in there nice and tight, has a nice even amount of heat, and start cooking both sides. 2 minutes have gone by in the pan. I'm going to flip these little slices over to show you the color on them. Woo! Look at that. Chef's kiss, baby. That is beautiful right there. That's exactly what you're looking for if you're doing this at home. Remember, you've already cooked the pork belly all the way through in the oven, in the Dutch oven. So all you're doing now is, once it's sliced up, is you're just caramelizing the outside a little bit with that sauce. Don't worry about this piece right here that I'm grabbing. It's not burnt or anything. It's simply the end cut of the roast, which are my personal favorites. Those are the ones I like to chop up and put it into leftover fried rice. Now it's time. Look at that. Just admire the color. If you did this at home, give yourself a little pat on the back. Give yourself a good job. Look at that. It is so beautiful. And I'm going to tell you right now, when I tasted this thing, it was hands down one of the best things that I have ever tasted in my life. It was so good. The fat wasn't too much, the meat was nice and tender, and the flavor was just spot on. But let's plate this up the way I like to do it personally at home. I got a nice piping hot bowl of Calrose rice. You can use a long grain white rice or whatever rice you have laying around at home. I'm going to ladle in some sauce. The sauce is cold because, well, the rice is hot, so I'm not worried about needing to heat up the sauce. Get some chopsticks and just mix everything up. Take some of the clumps out. And now I'm going to add in some green onions. You can add in sesame seeds, green onions. You can put in bonito flakes, nori. You can put soft-boiled egg if you want, Cupid mayo. It's up to you. And go ahead and give yourself some nice hearty slices of Chashu pork. Admire the color. You've earned it. And I want to thank everyone for watching this video. This Chashu pork was really fun, a little difficult to make, but I had a really good time making it, and I hope you guys do too. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video.